What does an experiment around modelling weather patterns nearly half a century ago tell us about managing complexity today? Stick around and you'll be finding out. Welcome back, my friends. Karim Harbott here, talking all things business agility and innovation. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to manage complexity. What complexity is, what unique challenges it poses, and why most organizations are getting it all wrong. Now, if you're enjoying these videos, please hit that like button. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below, so please tell us what you think in there. And if you never want to miss an episode, there are new episodes coming out each week, so please hit that subscribe button to be kept bang up to date. So let me take you back to 1961, and a mathematician called Edward Lorenz is running weather patterns on what passes for a computer back then, and he's interested in how to improve the models that we use to predict the weather. And so he's using a combination of 12 variables based on air temperature, wind speed, humidity, various things that are to do with the weather. And he's running through a simulation. And on this particular occasion, he ran through 2 months worth of data and came up with an output. He then subsequently wanted to repeat that experiment. So, given that in 1961 the processing power they had available was a fraction of what we have now, he decided not to run the whole thing. He decided to start from halfway through, where he had a printout of the data for all 12 variables, and he could just input it and kick it off from halfway through. So he did that, and he disappeared off to get a coffee. And an hour later, when he came back, he was astonished at the result, because it was unrecognizable from the first time he ran it. It was as if he'd pulled two random weathers out of a hat, and he could not understand what was going on. He initially thought, well, the computer must be broken, let me go and check that out. But the computer was fine. Everything was working as it should, yet he got this unbelievably unpredictable result. This result that made seemingly no sense at all. So what was going on? When he dove more deeply, what he found was for 11 of the 12 variables, he'd input the data perfectly, but for just one of those variables, just one, instead of putting it into 6 decimal places, he'd entered it in to 3 decimal places. Now, that is a tiny, tiny rounding error on just one of 12 variables. But even when he found that, he thought, this shouldn't impact the final result so dramatically. Right, we'd expect a little bit of variance from a tiny little change in the input. We should get some change in the output, but not unrecognizable. What on earth is going on? And it took many, many years to understand what was happening. But over those years, he got an appreciation for the fact that what he was dealing with was complexity. And this is the behavior, this is a hallmark of complex systems. We know Edward Lorenz for the butterfly effect. We know him for chaos theory, okay? And this is where it all began. So why is this relevant to us today? Well, in many organizations, we work with complex products, complex services, the ecosystems with our customers and our suppliers, and the people building our product. It has many, many moving parts. And this is the difference. We need to understand the difference between complicated and complex. Let me start there. Complicated systems are understandable. You can break them down into their constituent parts, and the whole is the sum of the parts. Each part interacts with a small number of other parts in ways that are known and that are predictable. So we can know if we make a small change here, there will be a change in the output, but it will be a similarly small change. It'll be a linear change, and it's predictable. That means we can understand it. We can model it with experts, get our head around what's going to happen, and know in advance if we change this by a little bit, this is going to happen. Think of a structural engineer saying, if we use this material, we'll be able to hold this load. It's difficult for most people, but there are people with that expertise who can do those calculations because the laws of physics tend not to change. Not unless you go at the speed of light, which we probably won't do. Okay, so we can understand that. Now, contrast that with a complex system like the weather. Well, there are many more variables, and each variable interacts with many other variables. Some of those interactions we can understand, some of those interactions we can't understand. And very quickly, we get an exponential increase in the number of interactions, in the number of potential scenarios. Think of a game of chess. 1 or 2 changes at the start will lead to a completely different game. And how many different scenarios are there? Possible scenarios for a game of chess. Okay, so this is the difference. It's a hallmark of complex systems that a small change in the input will lead to a massive and utterly unpredictable change in the output, just like Edward Lorenz found in 1961. So what does that mean for organizations? Because when we work in complex spaces, which we almost always do in knowledge work and product development and innovation, what that means for us is that we can't understand in advance what's going to happen. We can't know exactly what products to build, exactly what features to build, exactly how to do that. We can't know how the market's going to react. We can't know what our competitors are going to do in advance. There is no way of knowing that because these systems are unpredictable and they're non-linear. So how on earth do we make decisions when we can't know in advance? Well, not like most organizations make decisions right now, that's for sure. Because governance systems decision making in most traditional organizations is based on, I need to know everything before I make the decision. Put it in a business case. What am I going to get? When am I going to get it? How much is it going to cost? What are the benefits going to be? If we don't have that information, what on earth do? We reinvent our approach. That's what we do. To stop making a small number of big bets based on all the information we can possibly gather, and to start making a large number of small bets based on minimal information, but we test and we validate our assumptions quickly, easily, cheaply through experimentation, lots of experimentation. And we amplify those that are working and we dampen those that are not working. And in that way, the way you manage complexity is not through upfront thinking, upfront planning, but through feedback. Fast, continuous, cheap feedback and data and continuous decision making, which means we need people to think, we need to empower people to make decisions on the ground based on that data, and we need governance processes which enable that. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in this mentality of I need to know up front, which is a hangover from the Industrial Revolution, which implies the work we're doing is complicated, and it's not. It's complex. So we are using a hammer to try to paint a picture, and it's never going to work. We need to keep that hammer for when we're banging in a nail, but when we're painting a picture, we might need to get some paintbrushes and use that instead. So it's using the right tool at the right time for the right kind of work. That's how you manage complexity, and that is organizational change to enable it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that, please check out my posts on VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, on business agility, and on exploring versus exploiting. I'll see you next time.